Standby signal number 1 will be issued later tonight. And 2 new car bombings in Somalia kills at least 100 people. Good evening and welcome to TVB News. South Korea's President Yoon Suk-yeol has declared a period of national mourning. This after a Halloween crush killed some 153 people and injured more than 80 others in a packed nightlife area of Seoul. International leaders expressed condolences after at least 22 foreign nationals from 12 countries were among the dead. Tracy Furness reports.
Itaewon's steep, narrow streets could not cope with the large number of revelers.
And then there was just obviously waves of people coming in. This is like the middle of Itaewon, so waves are coming in from both sides. And more people fell, and then I lost my friend. And there's so many people. What are you gonna do with 10 people? And I had to like turn around and I told the crowd, you can't come this way. People are dying.
Family members looking for their loved ones Saturday night were able to make reports at a local community centre near Itaewon. Some were grief-stricken when learning the fate of their loved ones. South Korea's President Yoon Suk-yeol visited the site of the tragedy Sunday. He expressed his condolences to the victims, mostly teenagers and people in their 20s. This is truly tragic, he said. World leaders expressed their condolences. US President Joe Biden and First Lady Jill Biden wrote, "We grieve with the people of the Republic of Korea and send our best wishes for a quick recovery to all those who were injured." British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak tweeted, "All our thoughts are with those currently responding and all South Koreans at this very distressing time." Early Sunday, costumes and personal belongings mingled with blood spots on the narrow streets, while survivors huddled under emergency blankets among throngs of emergency workers and media. Tracy Furness, TVB News.
Here in Hong Kong, the Immigration Department has so far received no request from local residents for help in relation to the Seoul stampede. The Chinese embassy in South Korea has confirmed 4 Chinese nationals were among the dead last night. TVB got hold of some witnesses in the South Korean capital. They said it was a very stressful and chaotic scene. A lucky escape for a Hong Kong tourist in Seoul who dropped the idea of visiting the nightlife spots at the last minute.
Hongdae was more like an area for local university students. It was actually one of the popular spots for celebrating Halloween as well. While Itaewon, it's more for tourists, for foreigners, for pubs and bars. We didn't really see anyone dressed up today anymore. So I guess people probably aren't in the mood anyway.
A doctor elaborated on how deadly a stampede can be.
The event is due to traumatic asphyxia syndrome because people are piling up over one another. So much so that the pressure they created amongst themselves will stop them from effective breathing.
3, 2, 1. In 1993, a stampede happened in Lan Kwai Fong here in Hong Kong on New Year's Eve, leaving 21 revelers dead and many others injured. Since then, strict crowd control measures have been in place for large gatherings.
You have to really understand how many people can fit into that area, and that they do that by calculation. When too many people are in the area, they close the area and they wait until more people leave, then they let more people in. People are going to have to queue up outside.
Hong Kong police have stepped up crowd control efforts in preparation for Halloween celebrations in Lan Kwai Fong this week. Road closures will be in place, including Wellington Street and Diagua Street. Chief Executive John Lee gave his condolences to the victims of the stampede and demanded that authorities provide assistance to any Hong Kong residents if needed. The city reported 5,210 new cases of COVID-19 today. That's around 170 fewer than yesterday's tally. Among the newly reported cases, 478 were imported, a record high since the latest round of relaxation of quarantine measures last month. Local cases account for 4,732 infections, while no new mutant variants were reported. 11 residents from 10 care homes for the elderly and the disabled tested positive for the coronavirus, with 41 people being listed as close contacts. 3 schools reported week-long suspension of designated classes. Another 12 COVID patients have died, with the 5th wave having claimed the lives of 10,172 people so far. The city's melioidosis outbreak continues to wreak havoc in Shamshui-po as 10 construction workers tested positive for the bacteria that could lead to an infection. A government health expert noted that the 10 workers are not connected to previously infected patients in the neighborhood and believes there is another source of the outbreak. Timothy Lee tells us more.
10 workers at a construction site in Shamshui-po's Pacton estate tested positive for the bacteria. Aged between 39 and 66, they all suffer from chronic illnesses, but are currently asymptomatic. Just last week, 4 environmental samples collected at the Pacton Estate redevelopment site tested positive for the bacterium Burkholderia pseudomallei, a group of bacteria responsible for causing melioidosis infections. Many people living in the neighborhood expressed their concerns. This man said he could not worry too much and that he would just maintain the same attitude as he did during the peak of the COVID-19 epidemic. This woman said she will be more careful with the water from her faucet and will only use boiled water. Government health expert Yoon Kwak-young said the 10 construction workers have no connection with previously infected patients and believes there is another source of the outbreak. He said the workers could have been infected as far back as 30 years ago, as antibodies could remain in the body for many years. Yoon added that authorities are still investigating possible new sources of the disease, including contaminated soil and water, hand sanitizers, or air fresheners. Melioidosis is an extremely infectious disease commonly found in soil and muddy water, with no vaccines currently available. Timothy Lee, TVB News.
Macau authorities today said all residents must undergo rapid antigen tests for 3 consecutive days. This came after the city reported 3 more new COVID infections involving the same family. The cases reported involved a 43-year-old woman working at MGM Cotai and her 2 teenage sons. The woman was a close contact of a positive case identified in Zhuhai. Her last working day was last Friday. The casino has subsequently suspended operations. All working staff and customers are to be under lockdown for 3 days and required to perform daily nucleic acid tests. Separately, all Macau residents are required to upload their daily RAT results onto the Macau Health Code system from today for 3 straight days. If they fail to do so, their health code would turn yellow. They would be able to retrieve a green code after paying for a nucleic acid test. The observatory will issue the standby signal number 1 tonight as severe tropical storm Nalgae edges closer to the region. According to the present forecast track, Nalgae will come within 800 kilometers of Hong Kong today as it moves towards the northern part of the South China Sea. It will be windy over the territory in the next few days. The outer rain bands associated with Nalgae are expected to bring squally showers to the coast of Guangdong in the middle of the week. In Somalia, at least 100 people were killed Saturday in 2 car bombings at a busy junction in the capital, Mogadishu. This is the deadliest attack in the country since a truck bombing at the same spot killed more than 505 years ago. President Hassan Sheikh Mohammed told journalists as he visited the site that nearly 300 people were wounded. He appealed for international partners and Muslims around the world to send medical doctors. The Al-Qaeda-linked Al-Shabaab extremist group claimed responsibility. They said they were targeting the education ministry. Still to come on tonight's news. Russia suspends a grain export deal with Ukraine after what it said was a major drone attack on its Black Sea fleet in Crimea. Brazilians go to the polls in presidential election. And a Swiss railway company claims the record for the world's longest passenger train. Welcome back to TVB News. Russia says it has suspended its role in the Black Sea Grain Initiative, a deal in which Ukrainian ships would be given safe passage to export grain to the world. Moscow says its decision comes after a drone attack on its Black Sea fleet in Crimea, which it blames on Ukraine and Britain. Russia has also blamed the British Navy for destroying the Nord Stream gas pipelines last month, something Britain has denied. Nazvi Karim reports.
For 3 months, a fragile stability hung over grain supplies from Ukraine. A July 22nd agreement with Russia, brokered by the UN and Turkey, allowed Ukrainian ships to sail out of the Black Sea and feed a hungry world. 9 million tons of agricultural products have since been exported, but today, that deal is in tatters, with Russia pulling out after accusing Ukraine of a major drone attack on its Black Sea fleet in Crimea. Moscow accused British naval specialists of helping to coordinate the attack near Sevastopol on the Crimean Peninsula, which it says involved 16 drones. Ukraine and Britain have denied any involvement. Russia is demanding a Monday meeting of the UN Security Council to discuss the attack after telling UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres that it was suspending the deal for an indefinite period because it could not guarantee the safety of civilian ships. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky slammed the move, saying it was a completely transparent attempt by Russia to return to the threat of large-scale famine for Africa, for Asia. Meanwhile, US President Joe Biden called it purely outrageous and would worsen starvation in poorer countries. Acknowledging difficulties on the battlefield, Russian President Vladimir Putin ordered his defense minister Sergei Shoigu to improve training for reservists recently mobilized. With Ukrainian forces making gains in occupied territories in the east and south, the mobilization order resulted in 300,000 more Russian troops available for the front lines. 82,000 have already been deployed to Ukraine, while Putin wants the rest to undergo proper training and be given adequate weapons, equipment and supplies. Nazvi Karim, TVB News.
Brazilians go to the polls in presidential elections to decide between conservative incumbent Jair Bolsonaro and former President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva. The runoff is expected to be tight, with analysts saying it could go either way. More than 120 million Brazilians are expected to cast their ballots. Bolsonaro is promising to safeguard the country's Christian values, hoping to extend a presidency blighted by the COVID-19 pandemic. Lula is vowing to bring back the prosperity of his 2003 to 2020 reign, when Brazil's economy boomed and millions were brought out of poverty. In the first round of elections on October 2nd, Lula emerged first among 11 candidates with 48% of the votes, with Bolsonaro second with 43%. Security is tight, with fears that Bolsonaro may not accept the result should he lose. He has already said he does not trust the electronic voting system. Back locally, the lengthy waiting time for public rental housing has long been a source of frustration for Hong Kongers. However, Secretary for Housing Winnie Ho said she believes the situation will improve in 5 years' time once the construction of light public housing units are completed. Christy Khan reports.
To shorten the waiting time for public rental housing, Chief Executive Johnny announced in his policy address that the administration would build 30,000 light public housing units within the next 5 years. According to the Hong Kong Housing Authority, the average waiting time for public rental housing was 6 years as of June 2022. Authorities say the construction of light public housing units would reduce average waiting time to around 4.5 years. Speaking on a TVB program, Secretary for Housing Winnie Ho said the government has adequate land to meet the demand for public housing. However, construction does take time.
But the problem is the first 5 years. In the first 5 years, the supply is less. Currently, we are looking at a figure of 128,000, but it's still cannot meet the demand for people living in like the subdivided units.
Ho reiterated that the construction of light public housing units will offer those waiting for public rental housing a choice to improve their living conditions within a short period of time.
One of the very important features of light public housing is quick construction. So we are like separating the building in two parts. One part being built on site, the other part being built in the factory concurrently. And when the site was ready, the boxes from the factory can come. And so it will much shorten the time of construction by this parallel methods.
She added that average rents for light public housing would be very much lower, with a discount of almost 90% of conventional housing, noting that ancillary facilities are much lighter and simpler in design. On the topic of joining hands with private developers to build subsidized housing, the housing minister said authorities have been studying the details and collecting views from different parties in society.
We have to give enough incentive for the private developers to participate. On the other hand, we need to ensure the quality and how to set the discount price for these flats in the future. And on the other hand, we need a very good policy to balance all these factors.
She expected authorities to be able to provide more information to the public in the first quarter of next year. Christy Khan, TVB News.
In Switzerland, a railway company claimed the record for the world's longest passenger train Saturday. They celebrated with a trip on one of the most spectacular rail tracks through the Alps. The Eurasian Railway Company ran the 1.9-kilometer-long train, composed of 100 coaches, along the Albula-Bernina route from Preda to Bergen. The entire 25-kilometer journey took just over an hour. The route was designated a UNESCO World Heritage in 2008. It leads through 22 tunnels through the mountainside and across 48 bridges, including the curved Landwasser Viaduct. That's the news. Thanks for watching.